Because it makes you an easy target, many people would rather not bring it up in conversation. Also, I have a lot of questions. The first of which is this: how can someone do the right thing when they're aware that powerful people will fight back? Rebecca and Rachel are the names of the two little people who live in the world where the Lamb family took over TV. Their lineage begins with Daystar's daughters. Which one went in the wrong direction and picked the wrong option? Is it possible for a daughter to repeat her mother's mistakes? Tonight, we will discuss that and much more. Join us as we uncover some shocking details about Daystar's offspring. The internal conflict Rachel is experiencing is complex and emotionally taxing. It might appear like she and her husband, Joshua Brown, are simply going about their daily lives. However, there is more to her than what is immediately apparent to those who are familiar with her. In addition to struggling to control her feelings, Rachel is also battling for mental stability. She must now choose between hiding the ugly truths about her marriage or facing them head-on in order to keep things appearing normal. The speaker claims that the only way for Rachel to cope with the harsh reality she faces is to convince herself that everything is okay. This is the essence of a fantastical existence. As opposed to being a choice, it is a strategy for handling a scenario that may not be as it appears. The truth has been hidden for far too long, and facing it would require acknowledging the unpleasant and frequently painful facts. However, Rachel is determined to avoid confronting those realities. If she were to confront the reality of her situation, her marriage and life as she knows it could crumble. Rachel's efforts to protect herself from what appears to be an insurmountable threat are evident. However, in order to maintain peace and protect her identity and feeling of security, she has made a false belief. For some reason, the thought of the man she loves so much and plans to spend the rest of her life with, turning out to be someone else, is too terrifying for her to consider. Upon facing that reality, she would be forced to dismantle all that she has constructed around their bond. She would have to face the possibility that her choices were not optimal and that she could have been incorrect. However, doing so would jeopardize not only her marriage, but also her mental and emotional well-being. What makes this battle intriguing is that Rachel is trapped in a risky cycle of psychological stress. She will either continue to believe falsehoods or suffer the emotional and mental collapse that accompanies confronting reality. This is where the speaker compares Rachel's internal struggle to a never-ending battle. She must decide whether to shatter the mental barrier she has constructed or to remain ensconced in her solitude by disregarding the apparent. That peace, however, is weak and serves only as a bandage over a far deeper wound. Everything that has led up to this point must be faced in this battle. Not only Joshua's actions and behavior, fear of letting her story get away from her. The speaker stresses the emotional toll that Rachel's predicament is taking on her. She has the option to continue convincing herself that her marriage is fine, that her family isn't concerned, and that everything is proceeding according to plan, or she can confront the terrifying reality and jeopardize all she has worked for. She is terrified of that breakdown, of everything falling apart, so she keeps living in this false world. Despite their mental struggles, they can't help but feel sorry for them. The narrator is torn between feeling sorry for Rachel and furious with her. They get that Rachel may feel pressured to maintain this false calm, but they still feel sorry for her. It hurts to watch, especially because you know that Rachel will only improve if she stops avoiding the truth. According to the speaker, the tragedy lies in her inability to face the consequences of her own decisions, which has paralyzed her. For some reason, Rachel just can't bring herself to face the truth. Furthermore, Rachel's alleged complicity in her husband's actions remains an open question. According to the speaker, Rachel isn't just a helpless spectator. She's actively choosing to believe this lie. She isn't just making up a story to avoid dealing with the unpleasant truths. She is also denying the reality about her husband. Because being lied to is one thing, and choosing to live in deceit is another. This further complicates matters. Unfortunately, Rachel's mental health and marriage suffer as a result of her decision to sacrifice her emotional well-being in order to maintain peace. What will happen when Rachel's ability to live in her imagination is exhausted? What will happen when she lets down her guard and lets herself be vulnerable? Will she snap, or will she accept reality and find a way to improve? Though uncertain, the speaker does know this. Rachel's internal struggle has to end. This lie will eventually catch up with her. The only question is whether she has the strength to heal from it or if it will completely destroy her. Having and acting in accordance with her strong moral compass has always been her trademark. Something happened to her recently, though, and it is testing her principles, faith, and identity. A lot of individuals can relate to Rebecca's internal struggle. Standing up for your beliefs can be challenging, especially when doing so requires you to confront loved ones and the system you've known your whole life. Because of her ties to the Christian media and faith-based Daystar and Lamb families, Rebecca has been in the spotlight for the majority of her life. From a young age, she learned the value of family, love, and honesty. Daystar was founded by Marcus Lamb, who is Rebecca's father. His honesty, dedication to his ministry, and steadfastness to the gospel had always been things she admired about him. But when her father passed away and the family dynamic shifted, Rebecca started to question her assumptions about her ancestry in the church. The relationship between Rebecca and her mother, Johnny Lamb, is troubled. Rebecca began to notice that Johnny was making poor leadership decisions after Marcus's unexpected death. Her decision to wed Doug Weiss, a man she had grown close to following Marcus's death, was one of the things that troubled Johnny the most. How abruptly her mother's personal life took a turn was something Rebecca found annoying. She had always believed that one should take time to grieve and heal before jumping into a new relationship. More than simply the speed of their marriage was causing Rebecca anxiety. Concern for the family and the church's well-being was another source of her anxiety. It was her deepest suspicion that Johnny's new romance was all an act of church power-seeking rather than a genuine expression of love and healing. The Lamb family had always placed a premium on family and faith, and Rebecca worried that her mother's actions were eroding these principles. As Rebecca witnessed how the wedding to Doug Weiss appeared to overshadow Marcus's death in memory, this inner turmoil intensified. For Rebecca, it wasn't only about her mother. She also believed it had something to do with Daystar's destiny and the virtue of the church that Marcus had founded. As Rebecca's mother gained control over Daystar, she began to feel increasingly isolated. Since she was a little girl, Rebecca cherished spending time with her dad and dreamed of playing a larger role in the ministry's trajectory. Although Johnny began to make more decisions independently, Rebecca began to feel like an outsider in her own family. The truth was being tested in ways Becca never imagined. Beliefs in family loyalty, honesty, and openness were being tested by the people she loved and trusted. By standing up for what she believed in, she would be jeopardizing the relationships that mattered to her, while also going against her mother's decision. Rebecca felt conflicted between her obligation to tell the truth and her love for her family. Rebecca grew increasingly committed to her mission and less to her family as the situation within the Lamb family deteriorated. She wished to preserve the ministry and pay tribute to her father, but she couldn't ignore her growing concern about the direction things were taking. Truthfulness, Rebecca knew, could cost her many things, including her mother's love, her position in Daystar, and the respect of those who had supported her family for so long. Amidst this challenging period, Rebecca started to doubt her mother's actions and her role in the family's past. She felt a tremendous responsibility to continue living by the principles that Marcus had instilled in her, since he had always been a significant moral figure in her life. It seemed like Johnny's values were being chipped away with every decision she made. So how was she supposed to do that? The external pressures from those around Rebecca intensified her internal conflict. Messages expressing support for or opposition to her mother's decisions were flooding her inbox. Others advised her to remain silent and focus on keeping the family united, while still others urged her to stand up for what was right. Her confusion and self-doubt were exacerbated by these outside voices' comments. She struggled to find a balance between her moral compass and the need to maintain harmony within her family. These conflicting emotions were making it difficult for Rebecca to focus on her role in the church. The message that Daystar's work brought to people all over the world had always captivated her. Rebecca began to question the ministry's commitment to its founding principles. as she witnessed leadership at Daystar grow increasingly divided and the family dynamics shift. She could see that things were changing and they weren't improving. It was not an easy road for Rebecca to travel, as she thought about herself and battled inside. All night long, she fought her feelings of guilt, prayed for guidance, and attempted to make sense of her situation. She gave it some more thought and realized that being honest with her mother might not be the only thing it takes to stand up for what's right. The future of the ministry and the perpetuation of Marcus Lamb's legacy were at stake. Even if it means giving up everything, she knew that sometimes it's the right thing to do to face the hard facts. A lot of people, like Rebecca, have a hard time making tough decisions, and her struggle to be honest and stand up for what's right isn't unique to her or her ministry. Standing firm for what you believe in, no matter the cost, is at the heart of this. Upon coming to terms with the reality, Rebecca's narrative demonstrates the importance of having the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it appears like everyone is opposed to you. Beyond her personal struggle, Rebecca had a lot on the line. The stakes were high: Daystar's future, her family's reputation, and the principles instilled in her by her father. They refused to back down from fighting for justice, no matter the cost. The story will continue, depending on Rebecca's choices at these crucial junctures in her life. All across the globe, you can find systems that rely on authority, control, and power. Any institution, from families to governments to businesses, can employ such a system. However, there are instances when these methods fail. Even when their intentions are good to help others or to establish a solid foundation, for example, things can go wrong. A tool's original intent can be twisted into a means of deceiving, concealing, and controlling others. When people believe a system is flawed, it's easy to feel trapped, helpless, and trapped in a never-ending cycle of hopelessness. But that is the point at which you are asked to take action. Those involved in corrupt systems should prioritize seeing the truth at all times. No matter how tough it is to hear the truth, it is usually quite painful. It is easier to ignore the red flags and cast negative thoughts to one side if we convince ourselves that everything is okay. However, we are aware that something is amiss. Lying, deceit, and dishonesty are all forms of corruption that we encounter on a daily basis. Once we see the truth, we can't pretend it doesn't exist. If we want to fix things, we need to start by being honest. Now we get into the tricky part. Speaking out against crime and wrongdoing is never easy. It can feel like we're losing this battle at times. There will be tremendous pressure to blend in, the powerful will fight back, and dissenting voices will be silenced. Whether it's a minister, a politician, a boss, or even a member of one's own family, confronting a powerful person always seems to be a daunting task. People close to them usually support them, and they have a lot of power and influence. Our lives, relationships, careers, and public perception could all be at stake if we speak out. Everything appears to be on the line, and the cost is prohibitive. However, the reality is that enabling cheating has negative consequences for everyone involved, including the system as a whole. This is due to the fact that prolonging the growth of corruption makes it more difficult to repair the damage. Everyone below the person at the top of the chain also suffers because of it. Either they actively participate or they remain silent, rendering them complicit. The longer we remain silent, the more the system will continue to harm not only the community, but also the group and those in positions of power. That is why it is crucial to speak out against injustice, and not merely because doing so is rebellious. Having this realization means you know that your actions, no matter how small, can have an impact. Fighting for truth, integrity, and justice is being demanded of everyone, not just those who are asked to fight. Everyone needs to make sure the system is helping them, not hurting them. To preserve the principles that gave rise to the system and to safeguard individuals who may be unable to speak out, this is a plea. Plus, being a morally upright person does not require you to be flawless. Neither complete knowledge nor superhuman abilities are prerequisites. Having the guts to declare, "This is wrong," and take action when you feel alone is essential. No matter how nervous you are, you must raise your voice. When everyone else tells you to shut up and take a seat, You should stand up for what you believe in. It's about preventing the spread of evil. Ignoring them is easy. The long road to recovery and rebuilding begins when you make the conscious decision to face it, own it, and let it be known. There are more than just those on the outside who are expected to take action. This is also intended for those who are employed in these processes. Those who feel trapped by evil will find it useful. Those who feel trapped and unable to find a way out of the system are the intended recipients. They may feel like they've lost all hope and have given up too much. If they stand up for what's right, they might be afraid they'll lose everything they've worked for. The reality, though, is that they are not completely powerless. Putting honesty ahead of safety is always an option. Truth, rather than convenience, is always an option. No matter how entrenched in the system someone is, there is always someone who can take the initial step toward doing what is right. The most difficult aspect of combating corruption may actually be admitting that we are complicit in the problem. Our involvement has grown as a result of our own free will. We're afraid for our safety. We ignored the warning signs and remained silent. Nevertheless, owning up to our role in the issue does not indicate weakness. Rather, it demonstrates strength. It signifies that we are prepared to own up to our mistakes, adapt, and eradicate corruption in order to construct something superior. It takes time and effort to go from not being accountable to fully healed. You need to be brave, prepared to face reality, and patient. However, this is the sole path that leads to progress. This highlights the significance of the call to action. A chorus of voices must be raised to make a difference. The goal is to set off a domino effect that compels other individuals to follow suit. A truth teller has the power to ignite a social movement. When one person asks questions, challenges the status quo, and demands the necessary honesty, it can inspire many others to do the same. What corrupt systems members should do is thus obvious. Raise your voice. Never again will you have to put up with deceit, unfair treatment, and lies. No matter how bad it makes you feel, you should say something. Get your feelings out, even if it means being alone. Even if the system you're a part of appears hopelessly flawed, keep in mind that change is always possible. Rebuilding, improving, and doing things correctly can happen whenever you want. Always keep in mind that there are others who understand. When more people work together for truth, justice, and honesty, nothing can stand in their way. Running away from mental abuse isn't easy. A lot of doubt and pain await you on this bumpy road. A large portion of society places a premium on one's religious beliefs and practices. They provide us with a feeling of security, guidance, and meaning. But when the system that should be guiding you ends up hurting you, it can be really bad. When individuals are manipulated spiritually, their beliefs are shaped to suit the desires of those in power or established institutions. This kind of command is frequently nuanced yet powerful. That way, they won't dare to question, challenge, or discover their own voice because they'll be too afraid, dependent, and obedient. When someone finally realizes they are being deceived, it's as if a wall suddenly crumbles. The initial sensations to manifest are uncertainties, unease, or mistrust. Their size makes them difficult to spot. Maybe their boss says things that make them feel inadequate. Alternatively, perhaps a lesson is illogical. However, they are oblivious to the situation due to their faith in the leader. Although fleeting at first, the sensation intensifies with time. It becomes more difficult to disregard the growing chorus of manipulative thoughts. What they've been led to believe and what they've been informed for so long begins to clash with what they've learned. As the journey begins, the traveler is frequently granted access to ask questions that were previously off limits. As a sign of weakness or rebellion, spiritual manipulators may view questioning authority or teachings as unacceptable. Fear of rejection, scorn, or ostracism is a real possibility. Trust the leaders and have faith in the system, the people are told. They are also instructed to refrain from asking excessive questions. When people begin to ask such questions, they may feel betrayed by their faith or group. This internal struggle and the need for external approval can paralyze you. However, in order to gain freedom, the first step is to inquire. Being open to questioning lessons, authority, and reasons is the only way for people to start seeing things clearly. Doing so can be extremely challenging, particularly if these beliefs have influenced your entire life. They may have invested years, if not decades, in this system, forming friendships, a sense of belonging, and self-discovery. The thought of abandoning that can be terrifying. People who have been influenced spiritually are frequently instructed to rely on external sources, such as the words of community leaders, for support. Individuals reassure them that their value is contingent upon their adherence to the established norms and regulations of the organization. People feel incredibly threatened and terrified by this. If they are unpopular, they may experience feelings of isolation and disorientation. When people emotionally and psychologically detach from the system, it can feel like they're losing a piece of themselves. The healing process and returning to your authentic self depend on your breaking free. Going on the journey requires a great deal of bravery because it is not an easy one. Recognizing that someone in authority has abused their position is the first step. The Bible, lessons, and people's emotions are often subtly altered as a means of spiritual manipulation. Prophets and other religious leaders sometimes make empty promises of redemption and enlightenment. As a means of discipline, telling people they are unlovable in God's eyes might work. They could play on your fears, guilt, or shame. A negative feedback loop is created when individuals feel trapped and unable to break free. To break free, you must first realize that you are a target of manipulation. When someone you care about realizes something isn't what it seemed to be, it can be a very difficult realization to accept. Their world may seem to be crumbling around them, and they may begin to doubt their own knowledge. Coping with the shock and sadness is a necessary component of healing, but it can be overwhelming. Recognizing when you are a target of manipulation is a powerful first step in reclaiming your agency and independence. Having doubts or calling them out is no longer something they need to be scared of. They have a better chance of healing and developing in a protected setting.